I have a couple brought with me. If anybody wants to, it's not the what?
That's when you're done. When you're done, if you could click this to end the broadcast, okay, that'd be great. So here's
still looking through
one here. Yeah, this is mine.
How late was it?
11.
Story that more that still unpaid the fee to come to the yeshiva. So they stood up and came down and
Take it out. I don't know if you were thinking when you went there. This is where you're thinking.
Ask Lori. Ask Lori if you push Ask Lori.
I was asked, I didn't make it, but I was asked to lead up and they did it perfect.
Let's start now. Give a break. Yeah. Just want to know if they're taking a break. No breaks.
That's never been enough for many years of utilizing.
Thank you for inviting me. Just give me a sign.
I only have one music song. I was in school.
Miriam, come sit here. Come here. What about, you want to come here?
That's the only difference in the
Whatever. You want to come sit here?
Kick him so I can say hello. Kick him so I can say hello to him. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, get you on the list. Let me get you on. Even though you're not the person I thought you were. I would have said it. I
Look, I'll send you so many people.
That's what I thought it was you because.
Okay, I'd like to start.
Somebody has to start this.
It was before, I don't know, you told me to push stops.
Oh, I don't know. Could you ask Holy Brother over here? Could you
Is
make
this happening?
Welcome, everybody. A lot of familiar faces and a few unfamiliar faces. So, first of all, it should be Ilui Nishmas, Morenu, Rabbeinu, V'Chavereinu, Reb Shlomo ben Rav Naftali, Zichron Livrocha, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. So I'd like to start off the way Rav Raz ended, with a little song. You know, when he spoke about how whatever we want, one thing Shlomo was, he wasn't that. He was more. There's songs, there's Torahs. We'll start off with a little music. This is the first nigun that I was present when Reb Shlomo made up. So it stuck with me, especially all my life. It goes like this. I lie, 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 oh. Ay, 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 I first heard that in 1972, right before the wedding of Neman and Malka from the House of Love and Prayer. A few people might know that wedding in Berkeley. And I had just met Shlomo, really met him, not too long before that, which I'll talk about also. But Miriam Futterman told me that I absolutely have to tell one brief little anecdote about how I met Shlomo, because the time I ever saw him was in 1959. They had a hootenanny in Carnegie Hall, where all the folk musicians used to come, starting at midnight.
Excuse me, I don't think Vicky Hiller knows what a hootenanny is. I know what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a gathering to sing folk music. And the truth is, I went to see Pete Seeger. And then at one point in the concert, or in the hootenanny, somebody gets up and says, and now we'd like to welcome Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach to sing some Jewish folk songs. And Shlomo came out on the stage, and I see this, little Rebbe with a suit. He was wearing a suit still in those days. And, it kind of struck, well, that's nice, I'm also interested in that. I didn't come for that, but it might be my first encounter. Nothing really happened, inside or outside to me, except maybe in the inside of the inside, like Reb Raz was talking about. The next time I saw Reb Shlomo was at the Berkeley Folk Festival in 1966, where I was a very snobbish, serious classical music enthusiast working for my master's degree at UC Berkeley. And they had this folk festival where kind of like when a circus comes to town, they have a circus parade, and each performer gets to do one act, so they chose for the venue right outside the music building. There's a kind of a slope of grass, and everybody was sitting there. And the preceding act was Country Joe and the Fish. If any of you old timers remember Country Joe. And by the way, they're all Jewish. Even Joe McDonald has a Jewish mother. So I grew up with one of the guys who played in his band. David Cohn was the keyboardist. And out there, I figured I'll go out and listen a little bit. And Country Joe was going wild. The crowd was jumping out of their skin. And they were singing their very famous, popular anti-Vietnam War song, you know, that starts off, "Give me an F." And after they finished, you know, they only could sing one song, so they kind of left the stage, and the guy comes up and says, "And now we have for you Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach to sing some Jewish folk songs." And half of the place got up and walked out. It was, could be. Maybe they didn't know that Country Joe was also Jewish. But I felt so bad, you know, so on his way to the stage, I walked out to greet him. I didn't know what to say. So I just said, "Hi, I'm Jewish." And Shlomo reacted like I said, you know, I'm a Mashiach or something, you know. He gives me a big hug and a kiss, and he says, "Oh, do you have a Jewish name? What's your Jewish name?" So I told him, Benzion. "Oh, Benzion." You know, he was so happy to see me. Again, it didn't register on the outside, but on the inside, he really planted a seed. With that kiss, you know, it took me a little while, but finally, when I had my epiphany, I was living in Northern California, and I knew I was Jewish, and I a few things, you know, like I started doing.
I thought he was.
I was.
What is this?
But so I started asking around the commune and around the area, around Mendocino, if anybody knows of a rabbi who a guy like me could talk to. And every time I asked, you know, they say, no, that's not going to work, you know. And they said, wait a minute, there's one. There's a guy named Shlomo Carlebach. The name was a little familiar. And they said, you're lucky. He's in California. He's right in San Francisco at the House of Love and Prayer. I said, wow, the House of Love and Prayer? That's exactly what I want. So I got in my 1949 Studebaker pickup and headed down the coast, about a 4-hour drive. I started before I get to the House of Love and Prayer. Oh, also, that car was stalling all the time, so I had to rev it whenever I came to a red light. But I pulled into the no parking zone right in front of the House of Love and Prayer. And there was a fellow standing outside, said, "Oh, welcome, brother, we've been waiting for you." And I'm thinking, waiting for me? What's going on here? He says, "What can we do for you?" So I said, "The truth is, driving for 4 hours and I didn't eat anything. Maybe you have a glass of water or something I can eat." He says to me, he says, "That's the one thing I can't do." Because it happens to be Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, and it's a fast day, and we can't eat. He says, "But if you're really hungry, in a different way," he says, "come with me." And he leads me through the basement there of the little shul of the House of Love and Prayer. And there in the backyard, there's Shlomo sitting on a chair with this gigantic book open in front of him, shuckling away, and all the chevra sitting on the grass around him. And obviously, I didn't want to disturb anybody, but I had my whole list of questions that I'd prepared. And so he was in the middle of teaching, and I was just sitting, and I'm kind of tuning in a little bit difficult. I didn't understand everything, but by around a half an hour after that, I answered all of my questions without my asking them. And so the first thing I said to him after the shiur was over, I walked up there and I said, "What is this book that you're learning here?" You know, like, because he's amazing. He answered all my questions, you and he. He said, "This is Likutei Moharan, this is Rabbi Nachman." So in that instant, I met my two Rebbes. And ever since, you know, it stuck with me, everything.
I didn't write then,
That
not till
happened.
later.
So I introduced myself again, and first thing he said is, "You're coming for Shabbos, right?" I said, "No, I'm He said, it's okay, we'll find a place for you to stay. I said, no, but I'm married, I have a couple of kids. He said, no problem. But I wasn't quite ready yet. I went home, on fire I was, from just having met the two big Rebbes, and right away I wanted to know more about Rebbe Nachman. So anyway, that was my beginning with Shlomo. Shortly after that, I went for a Shabbos. I went the first time by myself. Again, Dina thought I'd lost my mind completely. And
Well, I just thought it's, one more trip. We had tried everything else. So, okay, he wants to do this for a while. But then when he wanted like this garment with like strings on it, and so I actually sewed one for him. And then we went to the local yarn store and we got the threads, and he knotted his own. It's like macrame. He knotted his own scissors. And, he still had like a ponytail down his back. But little by little.
But the payas were hidden within the
whole long hair.
Right. So and again, like I heard Shlomo's music for the first time and woke up the week before. And the next one, I schlepped Dina down to the House of Love and Prayer with the kids. We stayed by a friend in San Francisco, and we, I don't know if Dina really caught on the first time, but it was an amazing shot. That was my first real Shabbos. And we went back to Albion, California, and we started making Shabbos. Whatever I knew about it, I know you can't work, which aroused a lot of anger among the people in the commune. What do you mean you don't work? But I stuck to that, and we had a big redwood stump right outside of our house. And when I had nothing to do, I used to go out and count the rings. And I realized later that tree was standing when Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah on Har Sinai. That's how old the tree was. But we used to spread a white tablecloth.
That was our table. And we would bake these beautiful breads and dress in white. And those Shabbos were like the purest Shabbos. We didn't know anything. We just knew you can't work. You make these beautiful breads. You spread a white table. We dressed in white.
And you sing.
We sang. People would start coming from the House of Love and Prayer to teach us a little bit. And that's how we
And then I used to run down the hill before Shabbos, while it was still light. I'd run down the hill and jump into the Salmon Creek and take a little mikvah, because I'd learned that first Shabbos, Shlomo took me to the mikvah. Anyway, we hiked back up. Where?
Yeah.
In San Francisco.
Probably in the Mission.
I don't remember, because at the time I didn't pay attention. I didn't even know what a mikvah was before that. And we came up and we made Shabbos, and we did that for a while. Then we to San Francisco for Sukkot, I think was the next time. No.
we were there for Tisha B'Av when Nama was born.
Right, Tisha B'Av. We were staying with Yankala and at the time Shoshana, and in the middle of the night we woke up, and Namalea was born that night, and so like another rebirth. And was Sukkot, where we met Neila. She was just courting her at the time. And then the next time we came down was for this wedding. It was right around Hanukkah time. I don't remember exactly the date, but maybe somebody remembers. It was right around Hanukkah in Berkeley. And at that time I was with, we just sang. And it was such a beautiful nigun, especially to me, but everybody, we were singing it the whole night. And then the Shabbos following, obviously, we were singing it all the time, never getting tired. I think Shlomo's the only one I know who he has beautiful nigunim that you can always keep repeating and it never gets boring. You can just keep singing the same nigun for hours and it doesn't get, it just gets deeper. So that's my first encounter with Shlomo and also with Rabbi Nachman. And as I got to know him better, I realized that I also needed some serious advice to change my life and our life. And the whole kufa of the communes was kind of closing for me. And I realized that I wanted to learn. So I went to Shlomo and I said to him, I need to learn, but I want to go to a yeshiva where I can learn all day, but please don't tell me to go to New York. As I came from there, and that's not where I want to go. We walked the block there until finally we stood in front of the House of Love and Prayer, and this is burned into my memory. He looked, and anybody who knows Shlomo knows that he never tells people what. He might say, it would be nice if, or you might try, or something like that. He looked me straight in the eye and he said to me, Benzion, go by him and learn. I wasn't sure exactly what Gemara was when I realized it was Talmud, and I'd never even opened it. It was a serious change, and I told Dina, and asked her if it would be all right, and she thought it was.
We planned to come for a year, 1 year. We were coming for a long. It's been 44 years.
It's been what, about 40?
I agreed to come.
7 years now or something. Yeah.
No, not
So and at the time there was only one place where you could go. That was Har Zion. The diaspora yeshiva was the only place they would accept characters like me. And I won't go.
We still do.
So I won't go into all the details of that encounter, but suffice it to say that the Rebbetzin there. I was supposed to be in the kollel, like they told me that they even pay you to learn there. I think a scholarship. Wow, this is great. So I went into the office. The rabbi hugged me and told me, so welcome. We're so glad to see you. I had actually applied to the yeshiva. I don't think anybody else ever did that. When I got there, he said, just go into the office and see my Rebbetzin and she'll register you for the kollel. So she says, oh, you're married? I said, yeah. She says, let me see a ksuva. I said, my what? She says, a ksuva. I don't know what a ksuva is. Marriage license. So I said, well, I don't carry around my marriage license with me. So she said, so go get it. I said, but I'm all the way in Mivaseret, how am I going to? She said, so go get it. So I came back with this thing that we were actually married by a Reform rabbi who we
didn't register with the state because we didn't believe it at
We
that
didn't believe in
time.
the
And so we
state.
just had some cute little document with, Shir Shirim or whatever.
Yeah, some psukim with kind of like reminiscent of the Meraglim, except they were all women and they were hardly dressed. And they were carrying this board with grapes hanging from the pole. And that was my marriage license. So I showed it to her and she says, I'm sorry, but you're not married. And you can't be in the same house with that woman. So I called up Shlomo right away. I said, Rebbe, what did you do to me? Like the yeshiva the first time, I got kicked out of my own house. So he said, Sion, what are you doing tonight? I said, I have no idea. He says, we're making the highest wedding. And so he said, the only thing is I have a concert first. So be at the Shabbos house with a ksuva, a ring, a bottle of wine and a kiddush cup, and two witnesses, and we're going to make the highest wedding. So of course Shlomo invited the whole concert to the wedding. And I remember that moment of walking outside and seeing about 150, 300 people walking down the block to come to the wedding. And we had the highest wedding, and we sang and danced till dawn. And I got into the yeshiva. I walked up to the Rebbetzin and threw the ksuva down in front of her. I was welcomed, and I started learning, Baruch Hashem. And thank God Shlomo was there. And then when the Moshav started, we were among the first people there. And it turned out Shlomo was our next door neighbor. For about 20 years, we lived right next door to Shlomo. We got to see moments that a lot of people don't see, like the fact that he would come home from the concert 2:30 in the morning, and there'd be a line of yeshiva bacharim to see him because they couldn't come during the day because they'd be kicked out of yeshiva if they were hanging out with him. So they would sneak out of the dormitories at night and come for eitzes. And he used to give them koach to keep learning, all these yeshiva bachas. And I saw it right outside my window. I saw all these people waiting for him, listening in a little bit. And then I had the job, because I was living next door, I had to wake him up in the morning for a Gemara shir, which the guys asked for, that there shouldn't be people who don't know how to learn. Because if you don't know how to learn and you're trying to learn Gemara, so first Shlomo has to tell you what the Gemara is and the whole hishtalshelus of all the Rabbanim and stories and everything. You never really get into the Gemara. So they said to me, okay, the only time we can do this is 5 a.m. So I was supposed to wake up Shlomo at 5 a.m. I'm thinking, oh yeah, sure. He says, only thing is, Benzion, don't knock on my door because you'll wake up the girls. He says, just tap on my window by my bedroom. And I'm figuring, sure, he's going to just jump out. I know that he was up from 2:30 when he got home until about 4:30 when the line diminished. So I figured I'll try. I tap on the window. He jumps out of bed and he says, oh, you're saving my life. Thank you so much. A cup of coffee, and we were learning. And again, like Shlomo never stopped amazing me. So what I wanted to really talk about today involves that first meeting of Shlomo with also realizing who Reb Nachman was. And many of you probably have learned in Likutei Moharan, there's one Torah that Rabbi Nachman said, my advice is you should go with this Torah. This is Ki'ilu, my main Torah, Cash Torah. And this is Torah Reish Pei Beis in Likutei Moharan, where he's talking about finding the Nekuda Tova. And so maybe I'll just, I don't want to learn the whole Torah because there's no time for that, but just a little bit because it's important to what the words. If anybody needs it, I have a couple of, a few little ones carry all the way from Moshe. And there might be a few more here. But if anybody wants to look on at the end of the first part of the Likutei Moharan Torah Reish Pei Beis, Rabbi Nachman says, Da, you should know. Ki tzarech ladun es kol adam lechav zchus. Judge every person on the scale of merit. Vafilu mishu rasha gomor, even somebody who's a complete evil person. Tzarech lechapes v'limtzo bo eize me'at tov. Should search. You have to search and find in him some point. And that one place, he's not a Rasha. He's not an evil person. And through this, that you find in him a little bit of good, and you judge him in the scale of merit, that through this finding, judging him on the scale of merit and finding the good point, in that place he's not a Rasha, and the truth is, you see him in the scale of merit, and then you can bring him in tshuva, bring him home. And this is the way Rabbi Nachman introduces it, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he talks about judging everybody with kaf zchus. Usually when people teach, they teach something that they know. I wish I could say I know this, like this is a life's work that I know I'm working on, and a lot of other people are. It's very hard to look at a person and only see good. And then he goes on later on in the Torah where he talks about how even in himself he has to do this. No matter what you think of yourself, there are times when you think of yourself as not so good. And Rabbi Nachman's advice is even with yourself, you have to find a little bit of good and make a celebration about that one little good. And as you do that, you'll find more. And you keep on working on this and whole string of nekudos tovos, good points. Okay, and then he gets to the place where va'al yedei zeh nasi nigunin kimavaya b'makamach. He says, and this is the way songs are made. Bechinas menagin bechlei zemer. A musician who's playing on an instrument. Shehu bechina shemelake taruach toiva min haruach necheya. That he separates out. He picks out the good from the good ruach, the good spirit from the ugly one. Atzvus ruach. And then he says, "Al kain al yedei she'enu maniach v'hapil es atzmo u'mechayes atzmo b'mesher mechapes mevaker u'motze bi'atzmo ez nekuda toiva." And through this, that he finds all the good points in himself and also in others. So this is the way nigunim are made. And as soon as I read this for the first time, all I could think of was Shlomo. How many people here ever daven Shabbos with Reb Shlomo? Okay, so I just tell you the way it was on the Moshav, because that I experienced the most every Shabbos when he was there. He started from his house on Erev Shabbos, and his house was amazing because all the kids were always there, because he always had cake and cookies and Coca-Cola and everything, you know. He always said, you know, if Ribono Shel Olam only had the public relations that Coca-Cola has, you know. But anyway, so he would start out from his house, and anybody who's been to the Moshav knows that the distance between Shlomo's house and the Beit Knesset is maybe 150 meters, 200 meters, something like that. It would take him over a half an hour to walk because he had to stop. First of all, he had to kiss every kid. He would walk up to every child and hold him, kiss him on the forehead. And then he would hug and kiss everybody on the way and say, "Good Shabbos." And he looked you in the eye and he said, "Good Shabbos." And then finally he would get to the Beit Knesset and a lot of chevra hanging out outside. Every single one, every person, he had to say Good Shabbos. And when he went into the Beit Knesset, he didn't dare step up to the Amud until he said Good Shabbos to every single person that was sitting there or standing there. He had to say Good Shabbos. He'd look you straight in the eye with a big smile and say Good Shabbos, and it became Good Shabbos because of the way he said it. And only after he did that could he even think of going up to the Amud and to start L'chuna Ranina. So this is. I'm sorry, Mincha, not L'chuna. Yeah. Well, some of the more, you know, frumies would daven Mincha early on Yom Shishi because they knew that by the time Shlomo got to the Beit Knesset, it was way after Shkia. Sometimes it was even after Tzeis. So anyway, that was Shlomo's avoda for Leil Shabbos, and then he would open his mouth and start singing, and the melodies that came out, like Rabbi Nachman said, were made up of all the nekudos tovos of all the people that he had said Good Shabbos to. He brought all the nekudos tovos up there and raised it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is, in essence, what I see as Shlomo's main avoda in the world, was to bring people up, was to look at them and totally not even ignore the bad. It wasn't there. It wasn't that he saw it and ignored it. It wasn't there. He only saw the good in people. He only saw what we were aspiring to rather than what we are. And through his Good Shabbos and his Nekudas Tovos that he extracted from us, made the tefillah. And I've never seen anybody, I've seen a lot of places where they, all over the world, you know, Baruch Hashem, I've been no shortage of traveling. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Of all the chazanim and all the balei tefillah, there was nobody on such a level that could bring a huge amount of people up so beautifully and so melodically and in a way even permanently. I happen to know, again, from living next to him, there were people that came to him that were mamish criminals. I mean, they were really bad people at some point in their lives. And through his work, they became part of our chevra. Shabbos was something else for them and for all of us. And that's what about tefillah is. That's really what about tefillah's job is. He's a shaliach tzibur. He's the one that all the people send up to do this avodah. He's the one that's supposed to bring the good points of everybody. In fact, he even said, you're not allowed to daven for the Amid if there's somebody in the Kehillah that you hate or that hates you. You're not allowed to do that. And obviously there was nobody on that level for him. Everybody wanted him to be the Baal Tefillah. And so about Tefillah, that's what he is, a Shaliach Tzibur. He's the one who people send to bring their good points up to the Ribono Shel Olam. And Halavai, we should all make note of that. And before we dare step up there, we should do a little bit of self-examination and look around us and see all the that's in every Kehillah, no matter where it is. And then finally, open our mouths to daven on Shabbos. And Rebbe Nachman even goes on to talk about how, every little child, when he starts learning, in the Cheders, they start with Vayikra. And so people ask, why are you starting with Vayikra? You're talking about, Beis HaMikdash and Korbanos and everything. How can a 3-year-old have any concept of what's going on there? But the Vayikra, the word Vayikra ends with a little aleph. And the little aleph is, Rabbi Nachman says, is the children. And the truth is they have more access to the world of the Beis HaMikdash because they're fresh from up there. So maybe they don't know it verbally, maybe they don't have the way to express it, but they know. And Rabbi Nachman talks about that's how to build the Beis HaMikdash with the good points of every person. Remember how everybody was mitnadev, everybody was donating for the Beis HaMikdash. What were they donating? Their good. Everybody gives a little bit of their goodness, and with that you can build a Beis HaMikdash. And maybe that's exactly the reason why we don't today, because there are people still not doing that. That hopefully, everybody always told Rabbi Nachman, especially the Shpoel Zayder wrote him once that, you're 200 years ahead of your time. 200 years ahead of his time is now. It means, according to the Shpoel, now is the time for Rabbi Nachman. And he even said, I'm speaking to people, my light is burning until Mashiach. And I think Shlomo's is too. In my mind, there's no doubt. But when you realize that these notes that you're singing are your good points, and you're giving them to build a Beis HaMikdash, and all the little children are hopefully hearing this, and it's reminiscent of what they already know from above in the Vayikra, that's exactly what's happening, or what should be happening, and what can be happening, what will be happening with all of our help. And he talks about how, what is it that connects the good points of people with the nigunim, and he goes into detail about how when you sing or when you play an instrument, what you're doing is you're separating out the good notes out of the bad notes and putting together a melody. That a melody is the good notes, only the good notes. When a flutist or a clarinetist is blowing in his instrument, the ruach, and they're moving their fingers up and down, what they're doing, closing off that air except for certain parts. In other words, they're selecting only the right notes, the good notes, from the bad, and the bad ruach just goes out the end, nothing happens, and the good notes become the melodies. And Rabbi Nachman also singing, obviously. When you're singing is also ruach. Like Rabbi Nachman himself says that when you sing, what are you doing? You're combining the elements of air and fire and water. That you breathe in cold air, you breathe out warm air, because that's the fire, and it's ruach, and the moisture you get from the lungs penetrates the air, and you're exuding only the good air, the good ruach. And so singing is also that. When you sing, you're selecting the good notes out from the bad notes and putting them out into the world as a melody. And I know Shlomo must have created at least 1,000 nigunim. Maybe we have 500-600 of them that we know today, and then there are all the ones that he made up on Shabbos when nobody could record, and even he forgot. Like it wasn't so unusual that Shlomo would make up a nigun and it would be the most beautiful nigun, and then after Shabbos he forgot it. Thank God I have a good memory, so sometimes he would call me up and say, I'm in London now. How did that nigun go that I sang last Shabbos? And I would tell him, and then he would say, you're saving my life, brother, you're saving my life. And so that's what, for me, that's one of the main between Rabbi Nachman and Reb Shlomo, is that Reb Shlomo was the embodiment of this whole Torah of seeing only good, selecting only good, giving out only good, and with that, making the most beautiful melodies that I've ever experienced in Jewish music. And we know also that it wasn't just he sang simply, he was a chazan. And everybody knows that chazan is also the same word as chazon, prophecy. That prophecy is music. Even Shlomo would say, like whenever you read the Nevi'im, even the Haftorahs, he said the Haftorah, if you're reading the Haftorah, let's say for Parshas Vayera, so it means that Navi read that Parsha and had his nevuah from that Parsha and sang it. And that if you were aspiring to be a Navi, like the B'nai Nevi'im they talk about in Tanakh, when Shaul was going to become the king, Shmuel told him, you can't be the king because you don't know music yet. A Melech of Israel has to also have nevuah. And so he, just at that time, there happened to be a band of B'nai Nevi'im walking down the street. And so Shmuel says to him, go with them, they'll teach you. And only after he learned the music could he have access to prophecy. And through the access to prophecy, he could be a Melech in Yisrael. So Chazon, prophecy, is Nevuah is also the Chazan. The Chazan is a person who not only can sing, but he can really embellish the singing in such a way that the words come to life. And that's what Shlomo mastered also. He was an excellent chazan. Again, I've heard a lot of chazanim in my life, all over, some of the greatest. But nobody, even though his voice may not have been as flexible as theirs, he wasn't the best chazan in the world, but he was the true chazan. He was the one who was able to give over, this negia of prophecy into the world. There were some examples that I saw of this kind of prophecy. I'll just say one because it's the last time I saw Shlomo, band was on tour and we were in New York and we were going to be there for 3 weeks. And so right away, as soon as I got into Manhattan, I called up Shlomo. I said, Shlomo, when can I spend the Shabbos with you? And he says, I'm so sorry. He says, right, I'm in recording studio now. He says, and as soon as I leave, I have to go to England. I have concerts there. The 21st, come to, we'll have Shabbos together on the 21st at the shul in Manhattan, at the Shlomo shul. And so I said, good. I said, only thing is, I don't have a place to stay anywhere near the shul. So he says, call up Sammy, and he'll put you up. So right after I disconnected with Shlomo, I called up Sammy, and I said, Shlomo told me that I should ask you if I could stay by you. Sammy says, what? He says, nobody ever stays by me. He said, I don't even have another bed. What are you going to do? So I said, well, I don't know. Shlomo told me that I should ask you. He says, well, if Shlomo said, okay, so you can sleep on the couch. The 21st was the Shabbos right after Shlomo was niftar. He was niftar on Thursday night, late Thursday night. And somehow, also, I forgot, the most important detail was that Sammy tells me Shlomo's not going to be here for that Shabbos. He said he's not going to be here. He's going straight to Toronto to be with the girls. I said, but he told me that's what I should do. He said I should come on that Shabbos. Somehow he knew that that was what was going on. And I think I might have been one of the first to hear about it. Mickey Moshe Shur called me up that night and told me that Shlomo was niftar. And then I just remember I had my kids with me. 3 of my kids were with me in New York. And the 3 of us, we just sat down and cried for about an hour. No words. And then right after that, we got a guitar out and we started playing Yolam lo eshkach pikudecha. Anyway, without extending that, that was one of the examples that I saw of Shlomo's Nevuah. He mamish had some kind of feeling that that was it for him. And
He
Baruch
also
Hashem, I
called
was.
from Moshe's house. You were all together, you and the Richies.
Well, that was while he was still in England. We were at the Futterman's house, and a bunch of chevra there, seemingly by accident. That it just so happened that I was there, and I called up at the last minute and said, "Like to see you." Oh, sure, come on over. And then while we were there, I forget. Josh Rich arrived unannounced. No. Who was there was one of the women from the shul had a car accident, and she had a big neck brace on, and she was kind of recuperating by the Futtermans, and she was there too. I forget her name right now. But anyway, there were a bunch of chevra there. All of a sudden, the phone rings, and it's Shlomo. He's calling from Manchester, and he asked to speak with each of us by name. I mean, Nachman answered the phone, so he spoke to Nachman. And then he asked for me, and he gave over a little Torah, like a parting Torah. We didn't know it at the time. We thought he was just saying something. And he said to me something which was a chiddush for me. It was Parshas Vayera. And he said to me, Benzion, you have to know, just like Avram Avinu, that Hashem is not just the creator of the world. He's your best friend. You have to know that God is your best friend. And that's something that I never thought about God before. You know, it was always a little bit further out than that, than my best friend. So, and then he asked for Josh and this other woman and whoever was there. He knew who was there, and nobody had told him because he was calling Nachman. And somehow he knew. Again, another point of Nevuah. I think we're a little bit running out of time, and I want to sing one more song. This is a song that Shlomo composed at our wedding. When we had that wedding with all the people from the concert. And I think I was in another world at the time. We were standing there. You know, the way Shlomo makes weddings, it's not just that the bride's face is covered, it's also that the groom's face is covered with the tallis. And so there we were standing next to each other, completely covered up, experiencing things with senses that I didn't know I had yet. And Shlomo makes up this nigun. And I guess the only reason I know it now is because somebody had the foresight to record the thing. And it goes like this. And if you hear it once, you'll probably catch on very easy. It doesn't have words. It goes like this. And then I Thank you, everybody. I mean, I could go on forever with stories, but these are the ones that I chose for
I
today.
just wanted to add, in 1959, my father brought Shlomo to our house in Indiana.
Wow.
Because he was a phenomenal for a mile of a chef. He's still alive for a while. He just got a large for the Almond and in Chicago. And so he brought Shlomo Carlebach to a show where he was the college film father. And principal. He was for a wild chef at McCown. They all go for the and Shlomo did. So he did. Yeah, I remember to this day. He was a pastor on Friday night, and then many years later, my brother was living in New York. I lived in New York. For a side for many years later, my brother, not Boston, my brother lived in New York, and he was very upset. He had gone over to someone's house to learn Torah, gathering to learn Torah on a Friday night, and said, "Oh, this is only for invited guests." And he and his friend walked away very disappointed. And they met Shlomo on the street. My brother knew Shlomo, but wasn't going to show at that time. And Shlomo said, "How are you doing?" And my brother was like, just like very upset, and he says, "Why are you calling you holy brother? You don't even know who I am." He says, "What do you mean? I saw your sister Lori in Boston 2 weeks ago."
Wow. Yeah, he very rarely got people's names. That he met
And
once
And
after.
then when my daughter Shul, and he had my parents come in for Shabbos, my parents come in for Shabbos, and he walked into the Shul with my parents. He said, "But Noah, this is one of the first people who invited me to do a concert. There were like 300 people at this concert."
Beautiful.
You didn't if you had those little books with hundreds of numbers written on it. He was always hiring someone to try and organize it for him. It was hopeless.
And it was never lit. All the notebooks had lines on them, but he never wrote on them.
Lines. He
Always
just wrote the numbers everywhere.
diagonally
You'd
across
see
the
him in
page.
those days. We had just one phone on the Moshe, and it was in the office. And you'd see him in the middle of the night. He'd be sitting there, dialing,
Saving lives.
saving lives. I don't even. He'd call someone, and it was just the right person to call at just the right time. And we all say, "Thank God they didn't have cell phones yet." Because
We'd never see him.
who would ever get a word in edgewise?
Okay.
I got a funny Shlomo story for a quick one. A friend of mine who's very close friends with somebody who prayed at Temple Emmanuel in America, which is I came up with a high church of Reformed prayer. Everyone is praying, everyone in top hats, everyone is dressed like we dressed maybe on Yom Kippur, that's already dressed down. Nobody talked in shul. It was like very solemn. So she takes her friend because she wants to show her like Mama Shabbat. So brings her to Shlomo Carlebach on Friday night, and the place was wild. People are dancing. I think it might have been the night that Michael Jackson was even there. It was happy, joyous, wonderful. The women dancing, the men dancing. And she goes, "I don't understand this. This is not how Jews pray. You took me to Baptist revival meeting."
Just one last one is that one time I was invited, this was after Shlomo left the world, I was invited to daven a Shlomo Carlebach Shabbos in Philadelphia. I won't say the name of the shul or the rabbi, but just before I went up to the Yom to start davening, the rabbi comes up to me and whispers in my ear, "I want a complete Carlebach Shabbos, only no clapping and no dancing."
And we finished in half an hour.
Well, thank God my son Yehuda was there, and he hadn't heard that.
He just ignored it. He just ignored it.
He
And
jumped
the
up and started, and then
people
everybody
get
did.
up,
And
and
then,
people did get up.
Yeah.
They didn't get invited back there.
okay. Okay. Reb Shlomo, Mamish, we love you. Thank you, holy friends.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Learn that Torah if you get a chance. Reish Pei Beis in Likutei Moharan. It is Shlomo personified. Reish Pei Beis in the 282 in the first chelik of Likutei Moharan.
Got it on the internet.
Yeah, the whole Torah is beautiful. It's not just the part that I quoted.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, but we have to get back to the Moshe. So we can't hang out.
We can't listen to simple. Well, you're gonna mention it anyway.
No?
I can text her and ask her what
That's the right one.
Okay.
That's the right one. No, with the mouse. Not,